radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and you gators and grannies out there to this Friday morning edition of The Big Puzzle. I'm coming to you live from my kitchen in northern British Columbia here through the broadcast facilities of UCY TV. Thank you, UCY, for providing this platform for me to share my thoughts today. A lot of things going on in the world right now, and we're going to get into some of them, but before that, I want to introduce my guest, of course, is Chuck O'Celli, one of my favorite guys to talk with on the radio, and Chuck just got back from the Lancer Files. Apparently this is a conference that went on in Dallas, and I'm not really up on it, and I brought Chuck in today to talk about it and talk about what was discussed and disclosed and the people that he had conversations with. How you doing, Chuck, and welcome to the show. Always good to have you.
Well, thanks for having me, Barry. Really appreciate it. It's the JFK Lancer Conference, in they call it November in Dallas, which it was its 24th year this year of the conference. And certainly was interesting for me for a few reasons. I had actually never studied Dealey Plaza in person until this past week. So that's one thing, but the conference itself was also pretty interesting. Watching the media interactions over it and how certain people behave is also rather fascinating. But hey, what are you going to do? Got to tell you, Barry, there's some interesting stuff, and I haven't done my show yet since I've been back. I'm going to restart on Monday, but you know, it's just a lot to absorb, and the trip beat the hell out of me personally. So,
well, I know you wanted to talk about your great experience on the Greyhound bus there back, and how you would recommend that to anybody, right, Chuck?
Well, what I can say about the wonderful people at Greyhound is this: if indeed there is a hell, I am very sure that a packed Greyhound bus is the way you get there, because this is certainly what it was like, man. It was really just absolutely awful. I mean, I had this great experience at the conference, sandwiched by these two 26-hour bus trips that just were horrifying. Anyway, not just because of the discomfort of the seat, or the fact that you're on a bus, or any of that, or the strange people, but I mean, just a combination of all that, plus, people being angry about doing their jobs, and God help me, I mean, I'm also one of these guys who's visually impaired, so big fun on the Greyhound, yes.
Don't tell me the buses were full both ways, Chuck. Don't tell me that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Completely packed.
So you were shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow with people for 26 hours.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man.
And not the people that I would choose to be shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow with.
Well, you have a combination of a lot of different things at play there, from body odors to whatever, that are intangible. So I can just imagine, Chuck, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I wouldn't. But
listen,
anyways.
I'm not one of these like snobs who thinks he's better than other people or anything like that. But literally the first thing you notice is that there's a whole lot of guys with these manila envelopes that are coming out of prison, and they're being released, and somehow part of their package is a Greyhound bus ticket, which makes sense to me, I guess, when they let them go. There's dudes being dropped off by sheriff's department vans and stuff, and at the bus stations. I mean, just all throughout. Let's see, from Georgia to Alabama to Louisiana to what was it? Mississippi. I was in, and into Texas. You just lots of people on parole coming on out. Usually, these are the kind of guys that I used to get along with. I don't know, but the new generation of parolees are not my people. It seems like. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm getting old.
You must be getting old, Chuck. But how many states did you go through? 4 or 5 states?
Something like that. Like I said, let's count them up. So, Texas, Louisiana, that's 2. You got Alabama. You got, of course, I started in Georgia. Yeah, I guess that's about it. I guess that's 4. I don't know. But, it all looks the same.
Well, when you're a blind man, it all looks the same, doesn't it, Chuck? I was going to say how was the scenery, but wouldn't be the appropriate thing to say. Seeing you can see, I don't know what your range of vision is, but
no, it's cool. But also every town you get off in, I swear there's a union for the same angry panhandler who's at each stop, because you get off and you try and have a cigarette, because I still smoke. You try and have a cigarette or whatever, and you're trying to stretch your legs and trying to figure out, I didn't have much money, so I'm like, well, do I buy a soda or do I try and find a bathroom? What do I do with my 10-minute stop here? And you're trying to suck down a cigarette, and the same attitude guy comes to you with a story, and listen, I need something, you got to help me, and I don't got it. So you give the guy one cigarette or you don't. And and maybe you don't give them nothing because you got nothing to offer, and they're all angry. They're all angry. They're not as angry as the guys in New York, but they're more pushy, which is really strange. So I don't know. It was weird, and especially when you're seeing these guys at 3:00 in the morning in Jackson, Mississippi, or whatever. It's like, yeah, this is definitely not somewhere where I want to engage too much with the guy. Anyhow, look, I'm giving you all the stories of the road and not telling you anything else, right?
Well, yeah, I was just going to switch engines here, and let's get into this conference and what was disclosed and what was talked about. I'd like to hear that, Chuck.
Well, it was pretty fascinating. Journalists and authors and interesting guys from all over the place. Mostly, people that have degrees in this and that and the third thing, and somehow me mixed in there. Because I got to present as well, but I didn't have a book to sell. I tried to sell a handful of T-shirts, didn't do so well. I ran into, Jefferson Morley. That was a great guy to meet. John Newman, who is an incredible author and one of the guys that for years and years they ridiculed, when he said that Kennedy was going to pull out of Vietnam. And, that's not true. Kennedy's really responsible for starting the Vietnam War. This kind of thing. Of course, over time, John has been proven to be absolutely correct. And the assertions of the conspiracy theorists, right, over and over again, actually, Barry, being proven correct. I almost feel like that's what the theme of the conference was. And why do I say that? Okay, Priscilla Johnson McMillan, interesting journalist in air quotes, winds up moving in with Marina Oswald after Lee Harvey Oswald dies, living with her and writing this book, which forever painted Lee Harvey Oswald as this desperate sort of deranged malcontent character who was, beating his wife and really just a disaffected, horrendous human being at the age of 24 when he died, by the way. And Priscilla, over the years, people like me have claimed she looks like a CIA asset. Well, it was always denied, and whoa, you guys are crazy, and anything that doesn't agree with your crazy conspiracy theories is all the government, right, and is all agency. Well, it turns out that in the official files, if we look at it, not only was she begging for a job with the agency, but she was in fact useful to the agency and used by the agency. So there goes that little mythos out the window. It wasn't the crazy conspiracy theorists just seeing this stuff. It was actually happening. Oh, by the way, Hugh Ainsworth, another guy who's supposed to be an assassination witness, staunch defender of the lone nut theory. Guess what? Also turns out to be an agency asset in their own files. But it's really interesting. A whole bunch of things being denied. Here's another one, too, real quick. The mayor of Dallas on the day that Kennedy was killed is this guy, Earl Cabell. His brother, Charles Cabell, was one of the people that was asked to resign after the Bay of Pigs by John F. Kennedy. And for years and years, conspiracy theorists have pointed to the fact that the brother of the CIA officer who was asked to leave was, in charge of the city of Dallas that day. Isn't that a strange coincidence? Maybe that has something to do with the fact that intelligence agency guys were fully allowed to run all over that city for no reason at all. And I do mean not just the CIA, but, there was a military intelligence photographer in Dealey Plaza who photographed the book depository building moments after the shots were fired. Yeah, that's an absolute fact. I mean, the Warren Commission knows about it. The picture's been published. We've known about this since the 60s. But what's interesting here is, no intelligence involvement. It turns out that Mayor Earl Cabell was also a CIA asset. Dun, dun, dun. Big spoiler, right? And meanwhile, when I was leaving the city, I'm going down the street, and I'm noticing the architecture. Which was really disturbing, some of it, and I'll get into that in a minute because you might appreciate some of the weirdness that I found in the architecture. But I'm leaving the city, and I'm on foot, and I'm walking down to the dreaded Greyhound station, and I look up over my left shoulder because I notice a building that's a little bit different from the rest, and I glance up, and what do I see? The Cabell Federal Building is there. Obviously, it's named for one of the brothers, or maybe both. And, federal buildings named after guys who are really great human beings, like J. Edgar Hoover, who wrongly accused, imprisoned, and attempted to destroy individuals and organizations with things like COINTELPRO. He's got lots of buildings around the country, but I found it fascinating that in Dallas you have the Cabell Federal Building right there, right by the Greyhound station, maybe 2 blocks away. I thought that was really interesting. And like I said, the architecture on that building, a little bit different than some of the other ones. Anyway, you see Masonic symbols all over Dallas. I got to tell you that. Very obvious, very striking. And even some of the other things that I'm noticing, and I'm thinking about putting together something about these spheres that I'm seeing everywhere. Don't anybody think I was high in Dallas, although that was what Saturday night was like. There was, Friday night, excuse me, okay. A little muddy in the head, but it was Friday night, yeah. The spheres that these people erect in certain places and actually physically build them. I don't mean some ethereal sphere that's traveling around like a ghost. I do mean these spheres that are almost Epcot Center-like, that are placed around. In fact, one of the oil barons' families put one up so that it absolutely towers over Dealey Plaza and sort of overlooks it. And at night it becomes illuminated in a very curious way and actually shines down on a very big part of the killing ground where Kennedy was murdered. I find that really interesting.
I've never heard of them, Chuck.
Well, I don't think anybody's noticing these things. These are these spherical objects which are just sort of created, for different purposes, but they all seem to have this common thing. I haven't seen anybody really put it together. I'm thinking about doing a video on it, actually, because I've seen one here. I've seen one here in Georgia. I've seen them in a couple of other spots, a couple other states, and I'm going to collect together some photos and take a look at what these things are towering over. They're towering over some interesting spots historically, and I don't know what I'll be able to pull together about that. Of course, they they try to show you in some places that, Molech is being represented in the architecture in Dallas. I will tell you, there is some strange stuff in the architecture altogether, in the layout of the streets and everything. Of course, another funny note is that the strip club that Jack Ruby used to own, I think, is now the AT&T building. But anyway, a lot of things change and a lot of things stay the same, which is really the fascinating part about being there. So what did we learn at the conference? Oh, by the way, another guy that they said there was no interest in by the agency, and you people are absolutely crazy. Well, the more they let trickle out, which they're still doing, by the way, Barry, they're still letting documents tumble out, but there's no media coverage of it. Thousands and thousands of pages. We're finding as we go through it that in fact there was interest in and eyes from the CIA on a guy named Lee Harvey Oswald, not just in 1963, but going back to 1959, which they always claimed they had no interest in him whatsoever. So isn't it fascinating that our story is beginning to get some of the connective tissue? And I think that unless people like me work at it, the media is not going to take notice. And eventually, who knows, maybe it'll just be slipped in there nice and quietly that, you can't really solve this, but certainly it must have involved a few other people anyway, though you'll never be able to figure it out because Oswald was such a malcontent nut. But
I know you've been studying JFK for years, Chuck, and it must have been pretty cool to be in Dealey Plaza, to actually be there.
Well, there was a couple of things. I actually got a little bit of video footage. Of course, I couldn't take my own, by the way, because magically, Barry, I acquired a cell phone and I had a tablet, which I was able to take with me. I was going to take more electronics with me, but I'm glad I didn't, because none of my electronics would function. When I got to Dallas, just nothing worked. The cell phone, I attempted to call people on the cell phone. I even attempted to get a ride from the bus station. And it was automatically diverting my call to a Washington, D.C. number, no matter who I called. Turns out it was an ICE number, which is, the immigration people. And it was redirecting all my calls. I tried to call home in Georgia, and it diverted me to D.C. And then I tried to call Gail Nix Jackson in Dallas because she lives right there, and she's not going to any of the conferences. But I just wanted to kind of meet her for a cup of coffee, and she told me that the downtown city was kind of dangerous, and that she would want to pick me up from the bus station so I didn't have to walk through the minefield, which didn't bother me. I don't care. Oh, that's another fun thing I'll tell you about real quick. But before I get there, I tried to call her. I tried to call a taxi number, which I had saved for Dallas, and they all diverted to a Washington, D.C. number for immigration services, for the immigration enforcement. So I thought that was funny. But also my tablet, nothing worked. I couldn't photograph anything. I had to reset the phone, pull the battery out, just to even get it to mildly function, and then it was doing other crazy things while I was there. I bring my electronics home, by the way, and they're all functioning just fine. So I have no idea why that is. And anyway,
sounds pretty bizarre to me, Chuck, that that would happen, of course, while you're there, and then it works when you get home. Really doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out there's probably some kind of interference going on, but we know you're on their list anyways. So
yeah. Well, you're sure of that,
but if we're not on the list, then we're not doing our job. And I know you're right at the top of their list or close to it anyway. So,
well, but you
keep
also
up the good work, Chuck.
Exactly. That's encouragement as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's a compliment.
But listen, you know me well enough to know that I don't blame electronics malfunctioning on anything usually, but the electronics or the user, right? I'm always the guy. Oh, maybe it's the NSA. I go, no, it's not the NSA, guys. Come on, it's just Skype. Give me a break. Usually there's something wrong and you could diagnose the problem. Everything is not, all roads don't lead to the NSA when it comes to electronic difficulties, right? But this is something I wholly cannot explain unless I was directly interfered with by somebody, that, nothing wanted to function. So I'm stuck at the bus station. I have no idea where I'm going. And then I go over to a taxi, and the taxi man, I tell him where it is that I gotta meet with the guy I'm going to stay with in Dallas, and because I got to stay in a hotel room with Mike Swanson, who's the author of the War State, guy who's on my show all the time,
Right.
and the taxi guy refused to take me. He said, that's too short of a run. I'm not doing that, and he pulled away from me. So I'm still sitting there.
You didn't hit the $10 bill mark.
You know what? It wasn't that it was $10 because I offered him 15, which I had in my pocket, and that wasn't good enough for him to waste his time to let me in his cab. So, okay, no problem. What did I do? I went over to the homeless guys, and I said, "Which one of you knows where this hotel is?" He says, I know where it is. I says, all right, listen, I don't see too good. Here's what you do. You walk me a couple of blocks to the hotel since it's not that far away, and I'll give you this $15 that the effing cab driver wouldn't take. Guy's like, sure. Boom. So I had an escort going over to the hotel that I needed to go to, and he actually was waving off other homeless guys, so I actually got a path cleared for me with a dude that was, needing some money, who happened to be sitting on the side, who was willing to walk a couple of blocks to get paid. So I gave him the $15 instead of the cabbie. So anyway, that I thought that was a funny story.
I think I bet he really appreciated that, Chuck.
Probably. Well, that's
easiest $15 he's made in a couple days.
That's the thing. You know what? He struck me as a guy who, the way he was talking to me and everything, it sounded like he was probably a veteran also. Which, look, I am not for the military in any way, shape, or form, but these guys who were fooled into or tricked into serving in the armed forces, it's not their fault. And they, first off, went over there to probably do something good or to get a job because they couldn't get one another way. And then, on the other hand, once they're in the field, they're there to protect the guy next to them. And these are not the criminals. These are not the guys that we need to be focused on and giving negativity to. If anything, the corporate shill scumbags that send them into harm's way for their agendas really owe them a lot more. So anyhow, point being, I got to the hotel.
How far was the hotel from the conference?
It was not far from the conference at all. Thankfully, Mike picked a good spot. And we were actually, it's funny because me and Carmine Savastano, who's also on my show all the time, and Mike Swanson were all in the same hotel. So we all got to hang out together over the weekend. And that was a lot of fun. I sent you a couple pictures of us at the conference.
I know which guy is you, the little short, fat guy on the end.
Oh, I'm the short, fat guy. I'm 6 foot tall.
Okay, well, you look short in that picture compared to Carmen.
Well, because I'm a little slouched because my back and everything, and Carmine is a couple inches taller than me. So
that sounds like it was the highlight of the whole trip for you to be able to sit and have conversations with those guys and be in face to face. Must have been a good time for you, Chuck.
Oh yeah, it was. We ate together, we drank together, we did the conference together. It was a good time all the way around. If we didn't have the conference to do, we might have had more fun.
Well, kind of hard on limited funds too, eh?
Well, that was the other thing, But the deal is that it was some of my listeners that were able to help me to get there and have anything at all. Because I'll tell you, without the support of the people listening to the show, I wouldn't have been able to go. I would have had absolutely nothing to eat, and there would have been, it's not like I went and we splurged and went crazy. It was just I did have just enough to get back home and be, flat back to broke. But it was a really great experience and a lot of fun with those guys. So,
cool. So getting away from JFK for a minute, Chuck, what's your assessment of the current charade going on in Washington with Uranium One and all the other scandals that are coming out and all the leaks that are coming out? What do you take of this whole situation? I like what you have to say about situations like this because you really have a tendency to stay outside the box. So what do you think about the whole situation right now, Chuck?
It's a Rorschach test at this point, right? Because really when people start to break these things down, it tells you more about them than it does about the events. any longer. People that are very focused on uranium one and all that, you know what? They just hate the Democrats and the liberals, and they're the problem. And okay, cool, whatever. People that are screaming that, you know, Trump and sexual harassment and Roy Moore and blah, 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 blah. You know, most of those people would have hated the conservatives and would have hated anything that wasn't, you know, liberal in some way or other automatically. It doesn't matter. The fact is that most of this stuff is just a mass distraction. We're still getting robbed just like we always were. It's supposed to be a little more entertaining. This Trump is a revolting piece of filth as far as I'm concerned. But then again, so are all of our politicians. He's just a less refined piece of filth because he has no idea when to keep his mouth shut. See, this is how you know that, yeah, he might be from New York as far as his attitude goes, but he doesn't have a New York sensibility because most New Yorkers know when to keep their eyes down and their mouths shut. You know, people are known for being loud, from being up there, but this guy has no clue, and he just continuously says ridiculous things. It's fascinating to me that a bunch of things got ignored in the news cycle mix, right? While I'm away, Charlie Manson's dead. You know, that's a fascinating thing as far as I'm concerned. That's a lot more fascinating than most of this other crap. You know, there are politicians who are out there taking advantage of women along with entertainers who take advantage of whatever the object of their sexual desire is. Well, I could have told you that, and you didn't need all this scandal, which I'm now starting to believe is just another way to create a mass distraction all the way across. And anybody that they need to sweep up in this now, all you need to do is make an accusation and they're done. And you know how they beta tested this, Barry? As far as I'm concerned, they beta tested it with Bill Cosby. You know, listen, it may indeed be that Cosby did some of what they said he did, but as I've stated over and over again, this is not like a big shocker for people in Hollywood. Not just for him, but for anybody, it seems like. People get in power, they get into politics, they get into money, and all of a sudden they are the most decadent and vile people on the planet. And you know what it is? It's not because of the politics or the fame or the money. It's really that's the kind of piece of garbage that we're on the inside to begin with, number one, and they just get to let it out. Okay, there's that, but there's also the fact that this is being used as a device to, you know, for people to politically attack each other, socially attack each other. And now what is, you know, sexual harassment and what is assault? It almost sounds to me like we're going to get to a point where everything, you know, all sex is rape, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And all interaction between people that might have even the most mildly amorous aspect to it. If somebody's not happy with it either at the time and you know, or somebody has buyer's remorse later, there's going to be accusations of criminality and depravity attached to it at all times. This kind of thing aggravates me because it really does undermine and take away from real victims. You know, people that have actually been brutalized, people that have actually been injured, people who are actually traumatized. You know, oh, he said something terrible to me. Get over it. Okay?
Exactly.
Because
you're sure opening up a big can of worms, Chuck. Go ahead.
Well, that's the thing. They're opening a huge can of worms. So I find that whole thing highly, first of all, suspect. But it's also quite revolting. Meanwhile, hey, you know, there might actually be things going on. Not a lot of legislation is getting passed in the U.S., but they are making a lot of noise about it. And, you know, we're arguing once again, we're going to litigate trickle-down economics and what's actually going on in the international scene. All of these things, when you whirl it all together, it becomes a great, fabulous mess, Barry.
It does, yeah.
It's just, you know.
It's an oligarchy that boggles the brain, Chuck. It really does.
Well, you got to think to yourself, the people that you see on the news, and here's something I cannot state enough. The people you see on the news, the politicians, the guys you think are the controllers that we see. Look at the Bushes. Oh my God. Look at the Obamas. Oh my God. These are the rulers. This is not the rulers. This is barely middle management, because if this is who's in charge, then I don't know why anything works on this planet, because this is not the A team. Okay, this is not the A team. Sure, they get to enjoy some of the decadence and some of the alleged wealth, but these are not the intelligent ones that we're looking at, man.
I agree. They're just puppets, Chuck. Absolutely, and they're just playing a part. And
you got it.
You know, really, when you sit back, it's just a giant charade, and the public is being so duped and so deceived right now. It boggles my mind. It really does. Anything that I see come up that's a major news item, I look at it as just being a distraction. They're putting it out there for a reason. It's done to keep our minds and our focus off other issues, which I see going on all the time. Really, when we're looking right now, I have been listening a lot to Max Kaiser lately, and I listened to a few other financial people that I have a lot of respect for their opinions. And this currency reset that we're talking about, what they're talking about right now, and how the Chinese have instituted the what's called the pedo yen. I believe, did I get that wrong? I was reading articles on it. But we're really going to see, I think, a devaluation of the American dollar, and the trickle-down effect of that could be mind-boggling. We have Trump now talking about a currency reset and a one-world currency. This guy is just a puppet, Chuck, playing his part, and he's going to bring down some crazy stuff in the next little while. Yeah. I think.
Oh yeah, well, you know, and I'm sure you've listened to those shows where I've had Jim Willie on, and you know, this guy lays it right out. The petrodollar's dead. It just hasn't decided to lay down just yet because they haven't really put it down. But behind the scenes, that's over with. The day of the dominance of the dollar on the planet is finished. And you know, there was I know it's all fiction and it's all, but listen, in realistic terms, much of the world had to do business in dollars, and with this introduction of this currency, which is not a new concept, this is something they've been working on a while. You know, this is why the Chinese are buying gold. This is why they're, you know, making other deals. And by the way, those of you that think it was such a great idea to not be involved at all with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, believe it or not, that Asian trading bloc is going to be the dominant force on the planet now. So one way or another, we're going to have to deal with that. And hey, we don't want to be involved with the TPP. Everybody told us to go, you know, to go jump off the bridge already. I had to hold back on what I was going to say there.
Yeah. I would have bleeped you.
Well, I don't like to curse on air. I really don't. I mean, you know me in private, I'll lay it out, but I don't like to curse on air. The fact is that with all that stuff going on, I still personally don't even fully understand Bitcoin, which, you know, it looks to me like, yeah, it could be something very nice, and if we could create, you know, things that run off of that sort of framework, you know, more and more of them. There are many cryptocurrencies out there. It's interesting, but again, it seems to me like the kind of thing that's even easier for those who control it to just flip a switch and end it, you know. And that's the other thing we got to keep in mind, is that all of this shell game with, you know, the transference of resources via the surrogate thing that we call wealth and money and all this is something that has absolutely nothing to do with the realities of most of our lives. I mean, this is the game of those people, you know, those people that we never name, all of those, right? The actual bankers, not just the people whose names we know, but the actual bankers who actually conduct the business, who, you know, overnight can really bring an economy up or down any which way they want and change the circumstances of entire populations. It's almost an unbelievable situation we find ourselves in with this mess, and trying to listen to these financial guys, you know, some of them, they got some things right. Even, like I said, Jim Willie comes on, and he does a great job. You notice Mike Swanson's been on now. He's a Wall Street guy, and I'm not discussing Wall Street with him. You know why? Because nothing is happening on Wall Street. It's pretty much just staying status quo because everybody's hanging in there until the big play. And the big play is going to be a spike, probably, you know, going up or down. And when that happens, you know, everybody gets to cash out and make money, which, by the way, even a crashing market makes a lot of money for some people.
Right.
Depending on how you're playing the game. And a lot of people use this as an indicator as to how, the economy is going, but it's not an indicator. That's, what are rich people doing is what the answer is over there. I know it's not all rich people invested in the stock market, but these are the people that are really moving the numbers. Okay, you and me, no matter how many stocks we buy, and if we're day trading and going to E-Trade or whatever the hell online, we are not the influencer here. What we're doing and how much money we have to play with is not an indicator of how that thing's going to run. Yes, there are corporate numbers that are created based on this, but they do not survive solely on their stocks.
Right.
I find it interesting that the proposals for the new economic plans here in the U.S. have a lot to do with, hey, we're going to give more money to businesses because they'll have more money to invest, and if we cut the corporate tax rate, that's going to help a lot. Obviously, Trump doesn't really know how his corporation runs, because if he did, he would know that that's an idiotic thing to say. Corporations, when you cut their costs, don't reinvest and don't create new things unless they find it to be profitable. Bottom line.
Of course, buddy. Of course. They're only responsible to the shareholders, buddy, and nobody else.
Right. So, it's like, oh, well, gee, if we cut the corporate tax rate, then we'll be able to bring jobs back to America. If you believe that, then you know what? I got this guy. He dresses in a red suit.
I'll sell you a bridge.
I got a couple of bridges. I got beachfront property. I got a lot of things. Matter of fact, I got condos on the moon, baby. I'm ready to sell.
I'll sell you British Columbia, buddy.
That's it. Listen, I'll buy it because I'm fool enough to believe that this is the way the world works.
Well, at this point, as bad as Trump is, I'd trade you for Trudeau any day, buddy. Because this guy in Canada that we're dealing with is absolutely Looney Tune, insane, but not really. He's just an absolute puppet that hasn't got a clue, is absolutely mindless. And some of the stuff he's doing in Canada right now, I tell you, buddy, it's just unbelievable. That's all I can say. Reconditioning programs for ISIS fighters returning to Canada, who will be put on welfare and get special allowances to reintegrate them into Western society. This is what our government's doing in Canada. Chuck, have you seen this? Have you followed this at all?
Well, that's not what the legislation says. It's funny because I go and I look at what it says.
They watered it down, Chuck. But the actual bottom line is that they are spending money on a program to re-educate and reintegrate ISIS fighters into Western society. And this has been brought out in front of our Parliament. It's up in front of Parliament, and they are getting lambasted for it. Canadians are asking our government what the heck they are doing. They're cutting veterans' allowances. They're cutting back on vets and funding programs to reintegrate ISIS fighters. People who have, to me, these are the most atrocious people in the world, however you see them. To me, they're the most atrocious people in the world. The fact that our government would allow them back into our country without criminally charging them is ludicrous to begin with, Chuck.
Well, that's the funny thing, because according to Canadian law, that's what they would do to somebody who's a real, legitimate terrorist threat.
Yeah, they charge.
So I don't understand where this is coming from, because I cannot find the legislation that states what it is that those of you that are liberal hating are not showing me this legislation. If you got it, I want to see it, because
I will send it to you today, my friend, and you can have a real good look at it. And then I invite you to listen to the conversations that have gone on in the House of Commons in Canada. The opposition are bringing up all the facts. These are facts. They're not bullcrap. This is what the government's doing. And to me, this is beyond insanity. There could be no explanation for a government doing what the Liberal government wants to do right now. But then if you look at everything they've done as far as refugees coming into Canada versus Canadian citizens, you'd be appalled, Chuck. You would really be appalled. It's so obvious of the favoritism to refugees, putting them above Canadians that have been here all their lives. And I could give you numerous examples of what the Liberal government have done. Canadians are pissed, Chuck, pissed.
Well, if that's indeed the fact, then they should be. But every time I'm shown one of these things, I got to be honest with you. When I dig into it deeply enough, I find that the legislation doesn't say what it is that a lot of Canadian nationalists are saying. It's just like the Americans. Oh, they're doing this and that with the laws. And I say, okay, let's see it. And it's not there. So I don't know, man.
I'm going to send this to you today, Chuck, and I'll let you, after the show's over, I'll send you this information.
No, look, I'm
look
more...
at it and tell me what you think, because to me, right now, as far as I can see, this is true and it's factual. I don't like to say anything that I haven't really looked into myself. I went as far as to call, I'm not a supporter of any political party in Canada, but I phoned the Conservative representative for this area, kind of. He's in Vancouver, and I just put a few questions to him about this, and I got some hardcore answers. And I'll send you this information, Chuck. What they're doing is, there's just absolutely no explanation for what the Liberal government's doing right now with wanting to reintegrate ISIS fighters back into a Western society. These people will never be reintegrated. They are sworn to their beliefs, and they'll go to their graves defending or supporting those beliefs, as far as I'm concerned. So it's a crock of crap. But that's just one example, Chuck. Like I said, I will send you the information.
Well, like I said, please do, because most of the time, guys who are saying the things that you're saying are full of crap. Okay. But I want to see it, and I listen. I'm more than happy to complain about the status quo and the government doing what it's not supposed to be doing. Okay, if that is indeed the case, then they need to be taken to task, and also somebody needs to answer for the fact that it's the Western intelligence agencies that created this problem to begin with. And also the things like destroying a bystander nation like Iraq under false pretenses. Canada and the U.S. did participate in that. Mm-hmm. So fascinating. If that, if there's a bit of blowback and these guys now have to reap what they've sown a bit, I can see capturing these guys and taking them and putting them in prison and trying to figure out how to maybe, deprogram them. If that's the case, I can understand that, and that would be a really responsible thing to do. But since we're talking about government, I doubt it. So I would be more inclined to believe your story, and definitely would look at it. Now, I looked at some of the stuff that you sent me clips to, from the House of Commons there, where there's that woman making some pretty strident remarks, and then there's some answers back to her that sound pretty logical, and it sounds like an ideological difference here. But if there's actual legislation that says this, I would be appalled, alarmed, and shocked and pissed off if I was a Canadian, for sure. But we see counterintuitive measures in the United States constantly, so it wouldn't be a total surprise. But I just I have not seen it myself, so I can't attest to it being there. But obviously, listen, if it's as extreme as you say, I will have you on my show, and or come back to this one, and hey, let's hash it out. Let's figure out what's going on, and let's bring people's attention to it. If that's what it is. I've come to the conclusion that
this government is extreme, to say the least, Chuck. If you look at everything the Liberal government is doing right now in Canada, if you went down the list of what Trudeau's done since he's come into power, and you really put it into context, there's no explanation for what this government's doing. None of it. It's unbelievable what they're doing to our debt, what they're doing to other countries. I mean, we just gave how many millions of dollars to another country to build infrastructure. I mean, I could go up and down the list. He is putting us so far in debt in 2 years. It's just it boggles my mind. Canadians are waking up to him in droves. There's actually a group right now, Chuck, and I just was communicating with these people the last couple of days. I'm going to get the gentleman on one of my radio shows that are actually putting a legal challenge in against Trudeau for treason. And they're very, very serious about it. They are getting hundreds and hundreds of donations coming in. They just put the information. I'm going to send that one to you too after this show is over, so you can follow that in the next couple of weeks. What's going on with that? They are actually hiring lawyers, and they are going to charge Justin Trudeau with treason, because what he's doing in our country is treasonous. There is no explanation for a lot of things he's doing, Chuck. So I'll get that to you too.
Yeah, no,
please have a good look at that.
Please do, but I'm going to tell you this right now. We had a president named Obama in this country who was supposed to be the secret Muslim born in Kenya and all of that, and he's going to take down the country. And some people even thought he might illegally stay for a third term in office. A lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of accusations coming at Obama because he's going to be the last president we ever have, and a lot of other things, right? And fascinating how most of what the right wing nuts had to say was absolutely false. Over and over again. What he was is another scumbag in a long line of scumbags. Bottom line. And there is no difference between left and right. You guys get worked up on the right side because, they're not talking the same rhetoric that you want to hear. But the truth is they're all robbing us blind, and it's all about the scarcity of resources, and it's all about the control. And meanwhile, keep you entertained and engaged in an argument while the agenda's continued. Obama was just part of the plan. He didn't destroy the entire country as people said he would. He didn't begin World War III like people said he would. He wasn't, people were coming up with apocalyptic visions and relating him to the Antichrist in the Bible, quite honestly. And meanwhile, here we are still standing with Orange Julius now in charge. And this guy is yet again another corporate scumbag, no better or worse than Obama. He just doesn't, he's not as slick publicly. But he is more entertaining as a reality TV star, which is precisely what the American people deserve. Which, by the way, I look in the UCY chat room, and I noticed that somebody said tax breaks so they can build another factory in China. Yeah, maybe they'll build another factory in China, or they'll do what they've been doing for the past many years, which is just purchasing back their own stock, so that they can inflate their own stock prices and keep selling those at a higher rate, which has been continuously happening. It's like the cannibalistic corporate structure, which eventually, like all good merry-go-rounds, is going to have to come to an end. But meanwhile, I'm telling you right now, I see this Trudeau thing as mirroring the Obama thing. I think that he's probably no different, and there were plenty of people that wanted to get Obama impeached and charged with treason, and they wanted to go after, Hitlery, and they wanted to, go after the rest of the war criminals that were involved there. And meanwhile, he participates in signing the NDAA and clamping down on us like Bush did before, under the guise of protecting us from terrorists. Keep that in mind. All of that going on. I think that Trudeau is equal to our Obama, and you guys are still behind the curve a little bit. So catch up. You'll have a reality idiot who has no idea how anything works next. If you're going to stick with the plan, again, we're just a little ahead of you guys. I mean, what can you do? Our money's worth a little more, and things are more expensive, and we kill each other much quicker down here. So, we're your southern border cousins. I'm at this point where, quite honestly, the only hope that I have for any sort of intellectual integrity left in North America is maybe in Mexico, because otherwise the whole continent is stupid. I mean, that's where I'm coming down to at this point, because no matter how they're being robbed blind, as long as you say the right things to them, it's like I want a con man to come and, whisper sweet nothings in my ear while he pulls my wallet out of my back pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
and
they like to be kissed while they're getting, eh?
Well, listen, I can understand, but how far does, we're not getting kissed any longer. Now it's the tongue in the ear already.
Oh, and, yeah, right down the throat, buddy, choking us.
Well, I don't know. If you can get a tongue through an ear into a throat, you're talented. But the thing is that it seems to me like very little progress is going to be made about anything, because we're all meant to keep fighting over these things that really don't matter. I got to tell you that you'll probably not be able to remove Trudeau. The people from God, what is the name of that organization? For years, since 2008, they were trying to get Obama impeached. Good God, I can't think of them, but for a long time there, they were trying to get him done, and there were lawyers, and there was fundraisers, and there was all kinds of stuff. Nobody ever asked where that money went, by the way. But attempting to come up with ways to get rid of Obama, and meanwhile, he just had to wait out his turn like everybody else. And, you don't get rid of a guy unless...
Where it goes, if it goes anywhere at all, I don't know, Chuck, but just to bring people's attention to some of the criminality going on in their government is a good thing. Like you said, I know the powers that be and how it's all controlled and how it's all set up. and you're really bucking your head against the wall right now when you try and take these guys on. But you know what? Let's talk about something really cool for the last 5 minutes of the show here, Chuck. There's a company in Calgary now, just out of Calgary, that are producing hemp Lego blocks for house construction. And what they are is they kind of look like a Lego block, but they have interlocking panels that actually lock into each other. So you can build a wall out of these houses. You can build a wall for a house in about a quarter of the time for the exact same price now as normal house construction. And the R factor, I'm going to send you this information, Chuck, because this is really, I was in touch with these people yesterday. Ron Stevens, a gentleman in Ontario that has a show called Rock the Boat on UCY. He was the one that kind of got me into this information, and I looked into it, and I'll tell you, it's absolutely mind-boggling, Chuck, that we can now build a wall in your house out of hemp fiber for the same price as normal construction. It's absolutely going to turn the building construction upside down. The whole industry is going to change when this really starts to hit home on people. What can be done with this now, and the fact that we will never have to worry about rot in our walls using this construction method. You'll never have to worry about black mold in your house. You'll never have to worry about the chemicals that are emanated out of normal building materials. The poisons that are in your air in a new house construction would really boggle people's minds if they really knew what they were breathing. You're going to build houses that don't burn for the same price as a normal construction. It's really going to turn things upside down. It's a ground floor opportunity that is really going crazy here in Canada. I'm going to send you the link. I posted it actually in chat there in UCY, and that's the name of the company. And I urge everybody to take a look at this, Chuck. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
No, definitely. Look, I'm all for using hemp for every single thing that we can, hemp and cannabis. It seems to me as though we can solve so many issues with it. Look, you want medicine, you want food, you want building materials, you want plastic that isn't made from petrochemicals. Guess what? It's all there. And meanwhile, a little mood stabilizer. I'm a little surprised that Ron Stevens is into hemp-based stuff, because quite honestly, he seems a little angry. And I always know when you've been talking to him, too, because you get a little more angry after you've been talking to Ron a bit.
Ron and me don't share opinions on a lot of things, but I share opinions with him on a lot of things. And he has really kind of had his eyes opened up to cannabis here in the last 4 months that I've really had conversations with Ron. I've been on a couple shows with him, and he's really starting to see the light. He's starting to see the advantages and how it could revolutionize everything we're doing in our society right now that's detrimental to the one thing that we have to protect, and that's this planet, Chuck. But this now is a viable option. It's something that people are going to be able to purchase for the same price as building normal construction. And when people really start to look at the pros, if you run an ad in the newspaper and you put the pros of building with this against the cons, and the cons of building with normal construction, list some of the chemicals that are in the air when you build a new house and how long they stay in your house. List the dangers of black mold, something that we continually deal with as a society. Take that all away. Take away the fact that we're going to start building houses that you don't have to worry about them burning down. I mean, you don't think people are going to be lining up to do this, Chuck? I think they are, once society really understands what can be done with him. And it's time to bring it back on a large scale. And to me, this is pretty exciting stuff. It really is.
Oh yeah, look, I'm all for it. I mean, obviously, we should get to using these materials, which are just right in line with what can be handled. I mean, also when it's time to dispose of these things because they're broken down or whatever else,
they help the earth.
They don't do damage, and you don't have to stick them in a landfill where, if you're lucky, they'll break down into some other toxins. The reality is, in 10,000 years, right? You can actually break these things down, repurpose them without too much of an issue. Recycling, most of the time, half of the materials that we use is actually also detrimental to the environment. So yeah, I'm all for it. Let's use the better stuff, and if there's a way that we can make it competitively priced, hey, it's a winner. That's the way
there, Chuck. it's there now, and this, like I said, is going to revolutionize when builders and people really start to realize that of the advantages of using these new products that are coming online against of conventional building, and the price is the same. And before, building with hemp was more expensive, but this company has spent $20 billion developing these blocks, and Chuck, it's just absolutely mind-blowing what's going to happen in construction when builders and people really start to realize all the pros and cons of building with hemp. It's going to come, and it's going to come real quick now, I believe. And we need to do that, of course, because, you know, I'm not a doomsayer about the planet, Chuck, but I do study it closely. I monitor die-offs every day. I'm on 3 or 4 different sites that give me die-off reports. And without sounding like a doomsayer, the planet's in a lot of trouble. We all know that.
Absolutely.
We can see it. So we need right now as a society, Chuck, really to say, hey, listen, we've had enough. We really got to start thinking about our children. We've got to think about this planet, what it's going to be like in 10 or 15 years from now, seeing what we're seeing going on right now. And that's why this kind of thing coming along, it gets me excited, because people are going to grasp it. It's in the realms of the normal person now. People are going to go, hey, wait a second. I can build with this. I can build a house that's going to last how many years, Barry? 600 years? And I'm never going to have to worry about black mold, and I never have to worry about my house burning down and killing my family, or firemen coming in to save somebody's lives and losing their lives. It's just endless what it does when it gets my mind going on this, Chuck. It's something that really got me excited. I'm going to promote it. I'm involved with Ron and these guys, and we're going to be having a talk today about it, but this is going to come big time in society. So it's time.
No, absolutely. And you know what I hope is that more responsible growers get involved when it comes to cannabis, because, you know, the 80,000 different strains and trying to make things, you know, hyper, give you the best high possible and everything else, that's all fine and good. But people that are going to take care of these plants properly to maintain their integrity is what's going to be best all the way around. So, you know, if you're somebody out there who's trying to grow, you know, try and be as responsible and organic about it as possible. You know, it's not all about getting the greatest THC punch. I understand that could be profitable, but, you know, THC is not the only element that is involved there and is useful in the plant. So, you know, it's great to breed for that or whatever, but try and be responsible about the way you're taking care of your plants, because you never know, you could be creating the thing that is going to cure a lot of people, make a lot of people feel better, and be extremely useful in so many ways. We can't even begin to cover it all here, Barry.
No, we can't, Chuck. We could go on for an hour. You know, I could go on for an hour just talking about it, because it is the one thing, when I look at everything negative going on my planet right now, it's the one thing we as human beings could do right now to make monumental changes, but we gotta do it. We gotta grasp it. We gotta look ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, what kind of a pile of shit, excuse my language, are we leaving for our kids? And I see a great big pile, and we can make changes. And I don't want to be looking at my kids 15 years down the road saying, hey, Chuck, I knew something about it, but I didn't do anything about it. I'm pedal to the metal, buddy. Period.
No, I got you, and I agree with you. So what is this? This is just about the end, isn't it?
We got about a minute left here, Chuck. Listen, plug your show real quick. Always great to have you on, buddy, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. And I'll get this information to you when we leave the air. Well,
certainly, yeah. I'll definitely look over that information, and hey, maybe we'll do some more on that later. I'm going to resume my live show on Monday at Ocelli.com. Other affiliates also carry it, as well as UCY replays some of the shows from over at my website. Whatever Jules wants to replay, she replays. So don't know what she replays, but 5 days a week, 8 to 10 p.m. over there Eastern time is when I do my thing. And like I said, I'll be resuming again on Monday. And Barry, great to be with you.
Hey, great to have you, Chuck. Love you guys. See you again next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.